imagine a pig, dressed in human clothes, standing trial in a packed medieval courtroom? What about a rooster, sentenced to burn for a crime no one could prove? In the Middle Ages, animals weren't just livestock or companions. They were defendants, ritual offerings, and tools of terror in a world ruled by fear and superstition. From bizarre legal cases to secret ceremonies that sent chills through the church, the way medieval Europeans treated animals was stranger than any fiction. Why did they drag beasts into courtrooms? What drove them to sacrifice creatures in shadowy forests? Why are we still obsessed with these stories today? Buckle up for a wild journey into a time when animals held a mysterious, almost human place in society, and the truth is darker than you'd expect. Let's start in a dusty French village in 1457. A sow and her 6 piglets are hauled before a judge in Savigny. Their crime? Allegedly harming a young child. The courtroom buzzes with villagers, some angry, others just curious. The sow, draped in a crude tunic, faces a grim fate, execution by hanging. Her piglets, though, get a lighter sentence, a warning to behave. Sounds like a twisted fairy tale, right? But this was real. Across Europe, animals like pigs, dogs, and even rats faced trials for crimes. In 1474, a rooster in Basel was burned at the stake for supposedly laying an egg, a sign of witchcraft. Why treat animals like criminals? Medieval folks believed beasts could act with intent, almost like people. These trials weren't just for show. They were a way to restore order in a world where chaos lurked everywhere. But the courtroom was just the beginning. Things got even stranger in the shadows. Before Christianity reshaped Europe, animals were at the heart of pagan worship. Picture a dense forest in 7th century England. Villagers gather around a crude altar, a stag tied to it, its eyes wide with fear. They chant, spill its blood, and pray for a good harvest. These sacrifices were common in pre-Christian Europe, where animals were seen as bridges to the gods. Even as Christianity spread, old habits died hard. In remote villages, people blended pagan rites with Christian prayers, creating hybrid rituals that drove priests mad. One chronicle from 9th century Germany tells of a group slaughtering a horse under moonlight, believing it would ward off plague. The church called it devil worship, but for these folks, it was a desperate plea for survival. These secret ceremonies didn't just fade away. They went underground, and that's where the real trouble started. Now let's flip through the pages of a medieval bestiary. These weren't your average animal guides. Monks and scholars filled them with wild tales. Lions that could resurrect their cubs, serpents guarding holy treasures, or cats that carried demons in their eyes. Popular in the 12th and 13th centuries, bestiaries like the Aberdeen Bestiary didn't just describe animals, they gave them mystical powers. A wolf wasn't just a predator, it was a symbol of greed or Satan himself. An owl's hoot meant death was near. These beliefs shaped how people treated animals. In one French village, locals burned a cat alive, convinced it was a witch's spy. Bestiaries fueled these fears, turning every creature into a sign of divine will or demonic trickery. But why did these books grip people so tightly? They offered answers in a world full of questions, and that power led to some chilling acts. The church, though, wasn't about to let these ideas run wild. The church saw animal rituals as a slap in the face. By the 10th century, bishops were on a mission to crush them. Pagan practices were branded as heresy, and anyone caught could lose everything: land, freedom, or worse. The Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 doubled down, demanding an end to heathen acts. But the crackdowns only made things messier. In one German town, whispers spread about a secret cult sacrificing dogs to curse their enemies. True or not, the rumors sparked panic. Priests preached that animals in rituals were tools of the devil, and soon people started pointing fingers. A farmer with too many dead chickens, a witch. A woman seen with a black cat, doomed. These accusations tied animals to human guilt, and the fallout was brutal. But the church's war on superstition was— imagine being a thief in 14th century Italy, sentenced to a fate worse than prison. You're tied to a wild horse and dragged through the village square, the crowd jeering as you scream. Or picture a criminal locked in a cage with starving dogs, their teeth bared. Animals weren't just ritual props. They were weapons of justice. In the 1390s, one Italian town executed a man by letting trained hounds tear him apart. Why use animals? They made punishment a spectacle, amplifying fear and shame. Medieval legal codes, like Germany's Saxonspiegel, detailed these gruesome methods. Some criminals faced bears in public arenas, their fate a bloody show for the masses. These acts weren't just about justice. They were warnings. Step out of line, and you'd face not just the law, but the beasts. But what drove this fear was the heartbeat of medieval life. Plagues swept through villages, crops failed, and wars never seemed to end. People saw signs everywhere. A crow on a rooftop? Bad news. A two-headed calf? A curse from above. Animals became scapegoats for human woes. When a village in 15th century France lost its harvest, they drowned a litter of kittens, believing it would appease angry spirits. Historians now say these acts were desperate attempts to control chaos. Today, we might call it projection, blaming animals for things we couldn't face. Ever wonder why shark attacks spark mass panic? Or why we tell stories about cursed pets? We're not so different. Medieval people turned their fears into rituals and trials, using animals to carry the weight of their anxieties. But there's a darker layer to this story, one that stayed hidden for centuries. In the shadows of medieval Europe, secret cults kept the old ways alive. Whispers of these groups come from scattered records, like a 13th century French chronicle describing a cult that sacrificed goats in a forest clearing, believing it would bring wealth. These weren't just pagan holdovers. They were acts of rebellion against the church's iron grip. Some stories are wilder. A village in 14th century Spain allegedly used animal bones to curse rivals, sparking accusations of witchcraft. These tales, often exaggerated by fearful priests, fueled witch hunts. If a woman fed a stray dog, or a farmer kept an odd-looking sheep, they could be branded sorcerers. Animals and humans were tangled in a web of suspicion, and the truth was often lost in the panic. Why did these stories survive? They tapped into... Fast forward to now, and these medieval tales are lighting up the internet. Scroll through X, and you'll see posts calling animal trials medieval madness, or debating whether they were early psychology experiments. People can't get enough of the absurdity. A pig in a courtroom is as wild as it gets. Historians argue these practices reveal how humans process guilt and fear, projecting their flaws onto animals. Some speculate the trials were a way to control unruly villages, while others see them as a bizarre stab at justice. The fascination isn't just academic, it's personal. These stories hit a nerve because they're so alien, yet so human. We're drawn to the chaos, the mystery, and the sheer weirdness of it all. But what does it say about us that we're still hooked? So, what do a pig on trial, a goat on an altar, or a dog in a torture chamber tell us? The Middle Ages turned animals into mirrors of human fear, guilt, and hope. Every trial, ritual, or punishment was a desperate attempt to make sense of a world that felt like it was falling apart. These practices weren't just cruel or strange. They were deeply human. Today, we might not burn roosters or drag criminals with horses, but we still tell stories to tame our fears. What's the modern equivalent of a medieval animal trial? Are we still blaming creatures or each other for things we can't control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep digging into the mysteries of the past.